The stock market really didn't get what it needed from Nvidia earnings. Written by Martin Bakker-Daw, published by Barron's. With Nvidia effectively scoring the final points of the fourth quarter earnings season with an impressive beat and robust outlook, investors are likely to move toward a closer assessment of the risks that continue to linger over a stock market that has failed to get out of second gear since late October. Nvidia, which is down 5.49%, assuaged concerns over the pace of artificial intelligence demand while stoking concerns over the cost of technology's disruption in other sectors. It did so by topping Wall Street forecasts for both profit and revenue, and guiding investors to a current quarter top line of around $78 billion USD, with a 75.2% profit margin. That its shares were falling more than 2% in trading Thursday, however, suggests investors aren't quite ready to power the market's biggest stock back to its early November highs, and likely indicates it is now time to assess where broader indexes are headed into the final month of the quarter and beyond. That path so far hasn't been spectacular. The S&P 500, which is down 0.6%, has risen just 1.3% since the start of the year, thanks in part to the recent week-long rally of dip buying that has both supported the overall AI investment trade while simultaneously stoking questions over its longevity. Stepping back, however, the benchmark remains just a few points north of its late October levels, and investors are starting to show signs of fatigue in trying, and failing, over several different rallies to push it over 7,000. The American Association of Individual Investors' closely tracked survey of retail investor optimism, published Thursday, shows a third consecutive weekly decline in bullish sentiment, with the reading tracking 4 percentage points below its historical average. That's a curious outlook when you consider the tailwinds that could, at least in theory, drive stocks higher. The fourth quarter earnings season was a resounding success, with profits rising 14% to $682.3 billion, a near $33 billion improvement from earlier forecasts. Analysts still expect double-digit earnings growth for the current year. A dovish Federal Reserve, a fiscal boost from President Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and support from a solid economy and resilient labor market. Quote, strong profit growth, as emphasized by recent earnings reports, is one reason to think that the S&P 500 will do well over the rest of this year, said Thomas Matthews, head of Asia-Pacific markets at Capital Economics. He continued, saying, meanwhile, recent economic data have been strong, and the U.S. economy has weathered the tariffs, which, if anything now, look to be lower than previously expected. He added, a recession seems very unlikely. In fact, we think growth still will exceed expectations this year. The list of issues holding back sentiment are also well known, although in some respects less predictable in terms of their market impact. Trump's bellicose language towards Iran, alongside preparations for a military strike, could easily upset oil markets and broader risk sentiment. But we have seen markets comfortably absorb myriad geopolitical risks over the past few years, and concern remains sanguine. This is a situation we are watching closely, but the bottom line is that geopolitical issues rarely become major investment issues if the economy is on a solid footing, said Ryan Detrick, chief market strategist at Carson Group. AI disruption is likely the larger overhang that remains evident in the disorderly nature of sell-offs in software, financial services, and other sectors, such as private credit markets, exposed to the adoption of new technologies. Risk-off assets such as gold and U.S. Treasury bonds are also in high demand. Gold, which is down 0.28%, last traded at $5,188 an ounce, with gains in 2026 around 23%. While 10-year Treasury notes, which are up 0.22% currently, yields were trading under 4.05%, down 12 basis points since late December. The tug-of-war between a sound market backdrop and rising external risks is likely to continue, with offsetting pressures potentially holding back broader index gains into the coming weeks. Afghanistan says it launches attacks against Pakistan. Written by Al Jazeera staff and published by Al Jazeera staff. Afghanistan has launched attacks against Pakistan's military positions along their border in response to Pakistani airstrikes last week, Taliban authorities say, as Pakistan says its forces have responded. The media office of Afghanistan's military corps in the east side said in a statement that heavy clashes began late on Thursday in response to the recent airstrikes carried out by Pakistani forces in Nangarhar and Paktia provinces. Quote, in response to the repeated provocations and violations by Pakistani military circles, large-scale offensive operations have been launched against Pakistani military positions and installations along the Durrad line. Taliban government spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid wrote on a post on X. The country's 2,611-kilometer long border is known as the Durrand Line, which Afghanistan has not formally recognized. An Afghan military source told Al Jazeera that 10 Pakistani soldiers were killed and that 13 outposts were captured. Pakistan's Ministry of Information and Broadcasting said on X that Pakistani troops had delivered an immediate and effective response to Taliban fire across several sectors in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Quote, Taliban regime forces are being delivered punishment in Chitral, Khyber, Mohmand, Koram, and Bajar sectors. Early reports confirm heavy casualties on Afghan side, with multiple posts and equipment destroyed, the ministry said. There was no immediate comment from Pakistan on the Afghan claim that 10 soldiers were killed. Pakistan's government spokesperson wrote on X that no posts were captured or damaged. Pakistani security sources told Al Jazeera that Pakistani forces have inflicted heavy losses across the Pakistan-Afghanistan border in response to unprovoked Taliban aggression. Separately, a Pakistani security source told Al Jazeera that a number of Afghan soldiers fled from 3 locations targeted by Pakistani fire in retaliation for Afghan fire originating from those locations. On Sunday, Pakistan's military carried out strikes along the border with Afghanistan, saying it had killed at least 70 fighters. Afghanistan rejected the claim, saying civilians had been killed, including women and children. Relations between the neighbors have plunged in recent months, with land border crossings largely shut since deadly fighting in October killed more than 70 people on both sides. Islamabad accuses Afghanistan of failing to act against armed groups that carry out attacks in Pakistan, which the Taliban government denies. More to come. 3 times mortgage interest rates could fall this March, written by Matt Richardson, published by CBS News. Timing the mortgage interest rate climate, as even buyers and owners with limited experience know, can often feel like an impossible task. In the interest rate landscape of recent years, there wasn't even much to time. Mortgage interest rates were high, at one point at their highest level since 2000, and there were limited ways in which borrowers could get them lower. But that started to change over the past 18 months. Approximately, thanks in large part to a concentrated effort from the Federal Reserve to lower its benchmark interest rate. Mortgage interest rates specifically responded positively to these adjustments. Down by more than a full percentage point from where they sat in early 2025, it's not uncommon for buyers and owners hoping to refinance to be offered a rate comfortably in the 5% range right now. And while those are still higher than the near record lows offered in 2020 and 2021, they could once again be low enough to support taking action. They can potentially decline a bit lower this March, too, if certain market conditions break in favor of borrowers. But with mortgage interest rates changing daily, it helps to know when these declines could actually take place. Below, we'll detail 3 dates to keep in mind. While borrowers are always encouraged to monitor the mortgage rate climate each day, they may want to pay particular attention to the following dates, and the dates that follow each, for a timely opportunity to lock in a below average purchase or refinance rate. March 6th, 2026. The next unemployment report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is set to be released this day, and it could provide significant insight into the health of the economy after the February report showed robust job growth and a decline in the unemployment rate. Was that just an anomaly or a sign of future positive movement? We will find out on this date. The Federal Reserve and mortgage lenders will also be watching closely, as a rise in unemployment may encourage the Fed to continue cutting rates, and lenders may get ahead of that by lowering their offers. A drop in unemployment or a steady rate, meanwhile, may have the opposite effect. Be prepared for either then, as this could be a good time to lock in a rate. The next date, March 11th, 2026. Inflation has remained sticky in recent years, even if it remains considerably below the 9% it sat at in June 2022. but it did decline in the most recent report. And if the next inflation reading released on this date shows another drop, it could be the encouragement the Fed needs to resume its interest rate cut campaign, which has been on hold since December. So, economists and mortgage lenders, in particular, will be paying close attention to what the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases on the morning of March 11th. Home buyers and owners hoping to refinance should too, as this data has the potential to impact mortgage rates, maybe even more than would seem on paper. In the final date, March 18th, 2026, much has changed since the Federal Reserve met in January. Reports showing inflation and unemployment declining have subsequently been released, and a nominee for the Federal Reserve chairman role has since been announced. And by the time the central bank finally meets again, there was no February meeting, the newer aforementioned unemployment and inflation rates will have been released. So there will be plenty of information for the bank to work with to determine its interest rate policy. However, even if the bank doesn't officially issue a rate cut on March 18th, the odds of the bank doing so currently look low. Comments made after the meeting that could temporarily open the door for mortgage borrowers, as lenders are influenced by both what the Fed does and what it says it will and won't do. Take heed then on this date and the dates that follow, as mortgage interest rates are likely to respond to whatever news comes out of the two-day meeting. The bottom line is, this March could be an eventful time for the mortgage rate climate, or it may not be, depending on how these dates play out. Plenty of time to pay attention to and potentially benefit from. So consider your options closely and look to establish a baseline of rates right now that you can easily compare against at this same point next month. It took a long time for mortgage rates to become affordable again, so now that they're trending that way again, you'll want to position yourself as best as possible to take advantage. Trump set to meet with Mamdani to discuss housing on Thursday, written by Caitlin Collins, published by CNN. President Donald Trump is set to meet with New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani Thursday, according to two people familiar with the plans. They are expected to discuss housing, one of those people said. That was a topic during their last White House meeting in November. The New York Post first reported that Mamdani was traveling to Washington. During their last meeting, Trump heaped praise on Mamdani, suggesting he and the man he often falsely referred to as a communist actually had quite a bit in common. The two talked real estate, debated complicated zoning code, and mulled over how to get a utility giant to bring down electricity rates, among other topics. This is a developing story, and it will be updated. Scoop: U.S. citizens worst on stolen boat in deadly shooting with Cuba's Coast Guard. Written by Mark Caputo, published by Axios. The 24-foot boat involved in a deadly clash with Cuba's Coast Guard was stolen in the Florida Keys and had American citizens aboard, U.S. officials tell Axios. Why does this matter? 4 people were killed and 6 injured in the incident Wednesday, the latest source of tension between the U.S. and Cuba as the Trump administration increases pressure on Cuba's communist regime. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. is investigating the incident and has officially asked Cuba for access to the 6 injured people, a U.S. official told Axios. Cuban officials claim that occupants of the vessel opened fire on Cuba's Coast Guard as the boat approached the island nation, prompting its officers to return fire. No names of those involved have been released, but the U.S. official said the boat's owner in Florida had reported that the vessel had been stolen by an employee. Some of those who were on the boat have criminal records, the official said, and at least one of those killed was a U.S. citizen. Another U.S. citizen was among the injured and is receiving care in Cuba, the official said. At least one person on the board had a current U.S. K-1 visa, a non-immigrant visa allowing a foreigner to enter the United States to get married to a U.S. citizen, the official said. Others who were aboard the boat are believed to be legal permanent residents of the U.S. The purpose of the armed group's excursion to Cuba is unclear. Florida state and local officials also are investigating the incident. The Monroe County of Florida Sheriff's Office confirmed to Axios that it's investigating the theft of the boat. Its owner had reported the boat stolen from Big Pine Key late Wednesday after receiving calls from reporters about it, according to the Sheriff's Office report. The boat's owner told the sheriff's office he suspected a man who was helping lay tile in a renovation project had taken the vessel and left behind his truck near where the boat had been docked. The victim told investigators that the man has family in Cuba, to include 2 young daughters who were still in Cuba, the report says. House Oversight, Hillary Clinton agree on deposition terms, written by Maya Kaufman and Haley Fox, published by Politico. Hillary Clinton's testimony before members of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee will focus on the federal government's handling of the investigations into Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as potential ethics violations by elected officials, according to a person for the closed-door deposition in Chappaqua, New York. The former Secretary of State will testify today, and her husband, former President Bill Clinton, will be deposed Friday. Among the terms for Hillary Clinton's agreement to comply with a congressional subpoena and participate in the panel's Epstein investigation, she will agree to engage in questions about how Epstein and Maxwell's efforts to exploit their connections to powerful figures, such as the Clintons, to protect themselves from accountability for the alleged sex trafficking crimes, the person said. The oversight panel has also agreed to discuss the government's mishandling of the Epstein case, which began in Florida long after Bill Clinton left office. Notably, the list of agreed-upon issues does not include unrelated topics that have been a long fixation among Republicans, such as Hillary Clinton's handling of the 2012 Benghazi attack while she was Secretary of State, or her use of a private email server for official communications. She was dogged by both issues as she ran for president in 2016 against Donald Trump. Neither Bill nor Hillary Clinton has been accused of wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. Hillary Clinton has maintained she has no memory of meeting Epstein, while Bill Clinton has admitted to using Epstein's plane on several occasions, but has maintained he never visited his island. Both have said they had no knowledge of his crimes.